Hello, my name is Trace. I'm from the state of Kansas, within the United States. I would like to introduce to you this channel consisting of English with a subtitle.
Heart, a Schoolboy's Journal by Edmondo De Amicis. Preface. This book is specially dedicated to the boys of the elementary schools between the ages of 9 and 13 years, and might be entitled The Story of a Scholastic Year, written by a pupil of the 3rd class of an Italian municipal school. In saying written by a pupil of the 3rd class, I do not mean to say that it was written by him exactly as it is printed. He noted day by day in a copybook, as well as he knew how, what he had seen, felt, thought, in the school and outside the school. His father at the end of the year wrote these pages on those notes, taking care not to alter the thought, and preserving, when possible, the words of his son. 4 years later the boy, being then in the Lyceum, read over the MSS, and added something of his own, drawing on his memories, still fresh, of persons and of things. Now read this book, boys. I hope that you will be pleased with it, and that it may do you good. Edmondo De Amicis. October, Part 1. The first day of school. Monday, 17th. Today is the first day of school. The 3 months of vacation in the country have passed like a dream. This morning my mother took me to the Baretti schoolhouse to have me enter for the 3rd elementary grade. I was thinking of the country and went unwillingly. The streets were swarming with boys. The 2 bookshops were thronged with fathers and mothers who were purchasing bags, portfolios, and copybooks, and in front of the school so many people had collected that the beadle and the policeman found it hard to keep the entrance clear. Near the door I felt myself touched on the shoulder. It was my master of the 2nd grade, cheerful as usual, and with his red hair ruffled. He said to me, "So we are to part forever, Enrico?" I knew it well, yet the words pained me. We made our way in with difficulty. Ladies, gentlemen, women of the people, workmen, officials, nuns, and servants, all leading boys with one hand and holding the promotion books in the other, filled the anteroom and the stairs, making such a buzzing that it seemed like entering a theatre. I was glad to see once more that large room on the ground floor, with the doors leading to the 7 classes, where I had passed nearly every day for 3 years. There was a throng of teachers going and coming. My schoolmistress of the 1st upper class greeted me from the door of the classroom and said, "Enrico, you are going to the floor above this year. I shall not even see you pass by any more." And she gazed sadly at me. The principal was surrounded by women who were much worried because there was no room for their sons, and it struck me that his beard was a little whiter than it had been last year. I found the boys had grown taller and stouter. On the ground floor, where the divisions had already been made, there were little children of the 1st and lowest sections, who did not want to enter the classrooms, and who pulled back like donkeys. They had to be dragged in by force, and some ran away from the benches. Others, when they saw their parents leave, began to cry, and the parents had to go back and comfort, while the teachers were in despair. My little brother was placed in the class of Mistress Delcati. I was put with Master Perboni, upstairs on the 1st floor. At 10 o'clock we were all in our classes, 54 of us, only 15 or 16 of my companions of the 2nd class, among them De Rossi, the one who always gets the 1st prize. The school seemed so small and gloomy to me when I thought of the woods and the mountains where I had passed the summer. I thought again, too, of my master in the 2nd class, who was so good, and who always smiled at us, and who was so small that he seemed to be one of us. And I grieved that I should no longer see him, with his tumbled red hair. Our present teacher is tall. He has no beard, his hair is grey and long, and he has a straight line running crosswise on his forehead. He has a big voice, and he looks at us fixedly, one after the other, as though he were reading our thoughts, and he never smiles. I said to myself, This is my first day. There are 9 months more. What monthly examinations? I wanted to see my mother when I came out, and I ran to kiss her hand. She said to me, "Courage, Enrico, we will study together." And I returned home content. But I no longer have my master with his kind and merry smile, and school does not seem so nice to me as it did before. Our master, Tuesday, 18th. I like my new teacher too since this morning. While we were coming in and when he was already seated, some of his scholars of last year every now and then peeped in the door to salute him. They would present themselves and greet him. "Good morning, Senor Teacher." "Good morning, Senor Perboni." Some came in, touched his hand, and ran away. It was plain that they liked him, and would have been glad to return to him. He responded, "Good morning," and shook the hands, but he looked at no one. At every greeting his smile remained serious, with that deep wrinkle on his brow, with his face turned towards the window, and staring at the roof of the house opposite. And instead of being cheered by these greetings, he seemed to suffer from them. Then he looked at us closely, one after the other. While he was dictating, he got down and walked among the benches. Catching sight of a boy whose face was all red with little pimples, he stopped dictating, took the lad's face between his hands and examined it. Then he asked him what was the matter with him, and laid his hand on his forehead to feel if it were hot. Meanwhile, a boy behind him got up on the bench and began to play the marionette. The teacher turned around suddenly. The boy sat down at one dash, and remained there, with head hanging in dread of being punished. The master placed one hand on his head and said to him, "Don't do so again." Nothing more. Then he returned to his table and finished the dictation. When he was done, he looked at us a moment in silence. Then he said very, very slowly, with his big but kind voice, "Listen, we have a year to pass together. Let us see that we pass it well. Study and be good. I have no family. You are my family. Last year I had a mother. She is dead. I am left alone. I have no one but you in all the world. I have no other affection, no other thought than you. You must be my sons. I wish you well, and you must like me too. I do not wish to be obliged to punish anyone. Show me that you are boys of heart. Our school shall be a family, and you shall be my comfort and my pride. I do not ask you to give me a promise. I am sure that in your hearts you have already answered yes, and I thank you." Just then the beadle came in to announce the close of school. We all left our seats as quietly as could be. The boy who had stood up on the bench went up to the master and said to him in a trembling voice, "Forgive me, Signor Master." The master kissed him on the brow and said, "Go, my son." An accident. Friday, 21st. The year has begun with an accident. On my way to school this morning, I was repeating to my father the words of our teacher, when we noticed that the street was full of people who were pressing close to the door of the schoolhouse. Suddenly my father said, "An accident! The year is beginning badly." We passed through with some difficulty. The big hall was crowded with parents and children, whom the teachers had not succeeded in placing in the classrooms, and all were turning towards the principal's room, and we heard the voice, "Poor boy, poor Robetti." Over their heads at the end of the room we could see the helmet of a policeman and the bald head of the principal. Then a gentleman with a tall hat entered, and all said, "That is the doctor." My father inquired of a master, "What has happened?" "A wheel has passed over his foot," replied the latter. "His foot has been crushed," said another. He was a boy belonging to the second class, who, on his way to school through the Dora Grossa street, seeing a little child of the lowest class who had run away from its mother fall down in the middle of the street, a few paces from an omnibus, which was bearing down upon it, had hastened forward boldly, caught up the child, and placed it in safety. But as he had not withdrawn his own foot quickly enough, the wheel of the omnibus had passed over it. He was the son of a captain of artillery. While we were being told this, a woman entered the big hall, like mad, and forced her way through the crowd. She was Robetti's mother, who had been sent for. Another woman hastened towards her and flung her arms about her neck with sobs. It was the mother of the baby who had been saved. Both flew into the room, and a desperate cry made itself heard. "Oh, my Giulio! My child!" At that moment a carriage stopped before the door, and a little later the director made his appearance, with the boy in his arms. The latter leaned his head on his shoulder, with pallid face and closed eyes. Everyone stood very still. The sobs of the mother were audible. The director paused a moment, quite pale, and raised the boy up a little in his arms, in order to show him to the people. And then the masters, mistresses, parents, and boys all murmured together, "Bravo, Robetti! Bravo, poor child!" And they threw kisses to him. The mistresses and boys who were near him kissed his arms and hands. He opened his eyes and said, "My satchel!" The mother of the little boy whom he had saved showed it to him, and said amid her tears, "I will carry it for you, my dear little angel. I will carry it for you." They went out, placed the lad comfortably in the carriage, and the carriage drove away. Then we all entered school in silence. The Calabrian Boy, Saturday, 22nd. Yesterday afternoon, while the master was telling us the news of poor Robetti, who will have to go on crutches, the director entered with a new pupil, a lad with a very brown face, black hair, large black eyes, and thick eyebrows which met on his forehead. He was dressed entirely in dark clothes, with a black morocco belt round his waist. The director went away, after speaking a few words in the master's ear, leaving beside the latter the boy, who glanced about with his big black eyes as though frightened. The master took him by the hand and said to the class, "You ought to be glad. Today there enters our school a little Italian born in Reggio, in Calabria, more than 500 miles from here. Love your brother who has come from so far away. He was born in a glorious land, which has given illustrious men to Italy, and which now furnishes her with stout labourers and brave soldiers. In one of the most beautiful lands of our country, where there are great forests and great mountains, inhabited by people full of talent and courage. Treat him well, so that he shall not feel that he is far away from the city in which he was born. Make him see that an Italian boy, in whatever Italian school he sets his foot, will find brothers there." So saying, he rose and pointed out on the wall map of Italy the spot where lay Reggio in Calabria. Then he called, "Ernesto De Rossi!" The boy who always gets the first prize. De Rossi rose. "Come here," said the master. De Rossi left his bench and stepped up to the little table, facing the Calabrian. "As the head of the class," said the master to him, "give a welcome to this new companion, in the name of the whole school, the embrace of the sons of Piedmont to the son of Calabria." De Rossi embraced the Calabrian, saying in his clear voice, "Welcome," and the other kissed him impetuously on the cheeks. All clapped their hands. "Silence!" cried the master. "We don't clap hands in school." But it was clear that he was pleased, and the Calabrian was pleased also. The master gave him a place, and then he said again, "Bear well in mind what I have said to you. In order that this case might occur, that the Calabrian boy should be as though in his own house at Turin, and that a boy from Turin should be at home in Calabria, our country fought for 50 years, and 30,000 Italians died. You must all respect and love each other, but any one of you who should give offence to this comrade, because he was not born in our province, would render himself unworthy of ever again raising his eyes from the earth when he passes the tricoloured flag." Hardly was the Calabrian seated in his place when his neighbours presented him with pens and a picture, and another boy from the last bench sent him a Swiss postage stamp. My schoolmates, Tuesday, 25th. The boy who sent the postage stamp to the Calabrian is the one I like best of all. His name is Garrone. He is the biggest boy in the class, He is about 14 years old. His head is large, his shoulders broad. He is good, as one can see when he smiles, but it seems as though he always thought like a man. I already know several of my classmates. This named Coretti, and he wears chocolate-colored trousers and a catskin cap. He is always jolly. He is the son of a huckster of wood, who was a soldier in the War of 1866, in the squadron of Prince Umberto, and they say that he has 3 medals. There is little Nelly, a poor hunchback, a weak boy with a thin face. There is one who is very well dressed, who always wears fine Florentine plush, and is named Votini. On the bench in front of me there is a boy who is called the Little Mason, because his father is a mason. His face is as round as an apple, with a nose like a small ball. He possesses a special talent. He knows how to make a hare's face, and they all get him to do it, and then they laugh. He wears a little ragged cap, which he carries rolled up in his pocket like a handkerchief. Beside the Little Mason sits Garoffi, a thin, long, silly fellow with the nose and beak of a screech owl and very small eyes, who is always trading in little pens and images and matchboxes, and who writes the lesson on his nails in order that he may read it on the sly. Then there is a young gentleman, Carlo Nobis, who seems very haughty. He is between 2 boys I like, one the son of a blacksmith clad in a jacket which reaches to his knees, who is pale, as though from illness, who always has a frightened air and who never laughs. The other with red hair, who has a withered arm. His father has gone away to America, and his mother goes about peddling potherbs. And there is another curious fellow, my neighbor on the left, Sardi, small and thick-set, with no neck, a gruff fellow who speaks to no one, and doesn't seem to understand much, but stands watching the master without winking, his brow lined with wrinkles and his teeth set, and if he is questioned when the master is speaking, he makes no reply the first and second times, and the third time he gives a kick. And beside him there is a bold, cunning face belonging to a boy named Franti, who has already been expelled from another district. There are in addition 2 brothers who are dressed exactly alike, who resemble each other to a hair, and both of whom wear caps of Calabrian cut, with a peasant's plume. But handsomer than all the rest, the one who has the most talent, who will surely be the head this year also, is De Rossi, and the master, who has already perceived this, always questions him. But I like Precossi, the son of the blacksmith, the one with the long jacket who seems sickly. They say that his father beats him. He is very timid, and every time that he addresses or touches anyone he says, "Excuse me," and gazes at them with his kind, sad eyes. But Garrone is the biggest and the best. A generous deed. Wednesday 26th. It was this very morning that Garrone let us know what he is like. When I entered the school a little late, because the mistress of the upper first had stopped me to inquire at what hour she could find me at home, the master had not yet come, and 3 or 4 boys were teasing poor Crossi, the one with the red hair, who has a dead arm and whose mother sells vegetables. They were poking him with rulers, hitting him in the face with chestnut shells, and making him out to be a cripple and a monster by mimicking him, with his arm hanging in the sling. And he, alone on the end of the bench and quite pale, was gazing now at one and now at another with beseeching eyes, that they might leave him in peace. But the others mocked him worse than ever, and he began to tremble and to turn red with rage. All at once, Franti, the boy with the bad face, sprang upon a bench, and pretending that he was carrying a basket on each arm, he aped the mother of Crossi, when she used to come to wait for her son at the door, for she is ill now. Many began to laugh loudly. Then Crossi lost his head, and seizing an inkstand he hurled it at the other's head with all his strength, but Franti dodged, and the inkstand struck the master, who entered at the moment, full in the breast. All flew to their places, and became silent with terror. The master, quite pale, went to his table, and said in a stern voice, "Who did it? No one replied. The master raised his voice and said again, "Who was it?" Then Garrone, moved to pity for poor Crossi, rose abruptly and said resolutely, "It was I." The master looked at him and at the stupefied scholars, then said, "It was not you." And after a moment, "The guilty one shall not be punished. Let him rise." Crossi rose and said, weeping, "They were striking me and insulting me, and I lost my head and threw—" "Sit down," said the master. "Let those who provoked him rise." 4 rose and hung their heads. "You," said the master, "have insulted a companion who had given you no provocation. You have scoffed at an unfortunate lad. You have struck a weak person who could not defend himself. You have committed one of the basest, the most shameful acts with which a human creature can stain himself. Cowards!" Having said this, he came down among the benches, put his hand under Garrone's chin, as the latter stood with a drooping head, and having made him raise it, he looked him straight in the eye and said, "You are a noble soul." Garrone profited by the occasion to murmur something in the ear of the master, and he, turning towards the 4 culprits, said abruptly, "I forgive you."